Welcome in, everyone. Ready for another deep dive? This one, oh boy, this takes us straight to Mexico City for a true crime story you won't believe. It's like a thriller, but it's all real.
And the heart of it is this incredibly, almost unbelievably revered figure.
Father Francisco, right?
Exactly. This priest who is practically a celebrity known for, well, you name it, healing, exorcisms.
I was reading about the lines of people just waiting hours for him, for his blessing, for this special oil ritual he did. They were convinced he was like a miracle worker.
And it's not hard to see why. You had a city, Mexico City at the time, struggling with, let's be honest, terrifying levels of crime.
Kidnappings, murders, it was all over the news.
Exactly. And the student murders, Ada Mendoza and Norberto Ronquillo, those really shook people up. You can imagine everyone's on edge looking for any kind of hope.
And there's Father Francisco, this larger-than-life character. He even had his own book, was on TV all the time.
It's like he stepped right into that void, became this symbol of something good, something to believe in.
But this story, it's not just about him. There's another key player here, Leo, his deacon.
Leo's interesting. Bright guy, ambitious, wasn't content with just the usual religious studies. He was actually getting a master's in psychotherapy, of all things.
Trying to bridge that gap, huh? Between psychology and faith.
That's how it seems. Like he wanted to bring the church into the modern world, help people in a new way.
And I gather he was close with Father Francisco. Like, really close.
Oh, incredibly. They'd have these meetings late at night, sometimes going till morning. You get the sense of a real bond, a mentor-student thing, tons of trust.
Which makes what happens next even more wild. Leo disappears, vanishes.
Gone, right after one of those meetings with Father Francisco.
His brother Josue starts searching everywhere, frantic.
And then the worst news. Leo's body is found in his own car, abandoned.
It's just awful. This young man, so dedicated to his community, murdered. And the prime suspect.
The beloved priest, the man he trusted most.
And the community, they don't buy it, not for a second.
Nope. They're holding protests, demanding justice for Leo, but their anger, it's not directed at Father Francisco.
They're convinced someone else is responsible, like some outside evil must be at work.
They just couldn't wrap their heads around the idea that their priest, their symbol of hope, could be involved in something so horrible.
It's like their faith in him was blinding them to any other possibility.
It's understandable in a way. They were already living in fear with all the crime going on. They needed something to cling to.
And Father Francisco represented that. So to accept his guilt would mean, what? Shattering their entire world.
Exactly. But the police, they're not letting emotions get in the way. They follow the evidence and it leads them straight to, well, let's just say it gets really interesting.
Here's where it gets crazy. They find security footage. Shows Father Francisco with Leo's car near the time of death.
Boom. And that's not all. There are text messages from Leo confirming their meeting that night. Oh, and guess what? They find the keys to Leo's car.
On Father Francisco.
Yep. Talk about incriminating, huh? But here's the thing. Even with all that, a lot of people still stood by him.
Really. It's hard to imagine, looking at that evidence and still thinking, oh yeah, he's innocent.
It's wild, isn't it? But think about it. You've got these folks, they've spent years, maybe their whole lives, believing in this guy.
He's their priest, their spiritual guide, all that.
Right. So to suddenly turn around and accept that he could do something so awful, so violent, it'd be like their whole world was crumbling.
It rocked their faith, everything they thought they knew.
Absolutely. And his lawyers, they really played into that during the trial. They were adamant, saying the evidence was circumstantial, that there had to be another explanation.
And people wanted to believe them, right?
Yeah.
They were desperate for any reason to cling to the idea that Father Francisco wasn't a murderer.
Totally. It became this whole thing, like a battle of beliefs. You had those who trusted the evidence and those who just couldn't let go of their faith in him.
The courtroom must have been intense.
Oh, I bet. The source material even talks about how it divided the community. Some people were just torn, trying to reconcile these two conflicting ideas.
Yeah, that would mess you up. On one hand, you've got this deep trust in this man, this figure who's brought you comfort and guidance.
And on the other, there's this growing pile of evidence that says he might be a cold-blooded killer.
Talk about a crisis of faith.
No kidding. And meanwhile, you've got Leo's family there, too.
Trying to grieve while this whole community is basically defending their son's alleged murderer.
It's just tragic. Their pain must have been unimaginable.
So after all that, what happened? What was the verdict?
Well, despite his lawyer's best efforts and the support from all those people, the evidence was just too strong.
Guilty.
guilty. The judge sentenced him to 27 years.
Wow. That's a long time.
Yeah, it's a hefty sentence, especially in Mexico. Shows you how seriously they took this whole thing. But here's the thing. The motive, it was never really clear.
Why would he do it? Why would Father Francisco, this supposedly holy man, kill someone?
That's the million-dollar question, right? There were rumors, of course.
Oh, I bet. What kind of stuff?
The usual whispers, compromising photos, blackmail, maybe even something about financial shenanigans within the church.
It's like something straight out of a movie. Was there any truth to any of it?
Well, one journalist, Lourdes Murguia, she did some digging. Her investigation suggested that maybe, just maybe, Leo had stumbled onto something. Some shady dealings, maybe even involving Father Francisco himself.
So he killed him to keep him quiet, to protect himself.
It's a possibility. And if it's true, it paints a pretty dark picture of Father Francisco, doesn't it? Someone willing to go to any length to maintain his power, his image.
What about the community? How do they handle the news that their priest was a murderer?
I can't even imagine, right? Their whole world, their faith, all wrapped up in this guy, and suddenly, boom, he's a convicted killer.
That got to be devastating. Some folks probably doubled down, insisted he was innocent, couldn't accept it.
Oh, absolutely. But others, they felt betrayed, lost. It really shook their faith, made them question everything.
I read some people left the church entirely. Couldn't handle it.
Makes sense, you know. Such a huge blow. And then there's Leo's family, trying to grieve amidst all this chaos.
It's heartbreaking. Their son is gone, and the man accused of killing him is being defended by their own community.
Their pain, it must have been incredible. And then you have Leo's brother, Josue. He really steps up, refuses to let his brother be forgotten.
What'd he do?
He becomes this advocate, right? For transparency in the church, for accountability, doesn't want anyone else to go through what his family did.
Pushing for change. Good for him. Did it work? Did anything actually happen?
It's hard to say, you know. These things take time. But he definitely got people talking, pushed for stricter financial rules, stuff like that, to prevent the kind of corruption that might have been involved in Leo's death.
At least he tried. So where does this all leave us? This whole story, it's a lot to process.
It really is. I mean, it reminds you nobody's above suspicion. You can't just blindly trust even people in positions of power, religious figures, whoever.
And it shows how dangerous that blind faith can be.
Yeah.
We got to be willing to ask questions, hold people accountable, no matter who they are.
Exactly. It's about finding the truth, even when it hurts.
Well, this deep dive has certainly been intense. A real reminder of the dark side of human nature, but also a testament to those who fight for justice, even when it feels impossible.
That's the thing, right? Even amidst tragedy, there's hope. People like Josue, they keep fighting, they keep pushing for a better world.
That's what we got to hold on to. So to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this journey. We know it was heavy, but these are important conversations to have.
Keep asking questions, keep exploring, keep diving deep.
Until next time, everyone.